all your stuff. What can figure it out? That's how it chooses you.
Hi, Claire.
Oh, hello, Teresa. You started it today.
I did.
Just keeping me on my damn toes.
I took a shot.
Everybody, welcome to It Chooses You Smidgen Edition.
Yes, welcome to the Smidgen Edition, which is my, bailiwick? My domain? My...
Milieu.
Milieu? Yeah, why are all these words French? You and I discussed a few weeks ago that we had some issues with water in general. And I woke up this morning and the annual flooding of my kitchen from my upstairs neighbor's laundry turned out to be today.
Is it flood day already?
It's already flood day. Can you believe it?
My, how the year flies by.
Yeah, it's in my calendar even, and I just completely forgot to prepare.
I didn't even send you a card.
I know. No one marks the occasion. It's just me in my kitchen, toweling up puddles of soapy water that don't belong to me.
Ugh, what a nightmare.
So that was my good morning, which was nice. But it is nice because I text my neighbor upstairs and I say, hey, it's today. And she's like, okay, cool, I won't do laundry. And then she's like, but I think Jeremy on the third floor is doing laundry. And I walk upstairs. I'm like, hi, I'm your neighbor downstairs. Your laundry soap is flooding my kitchen. And he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, it's not your fault. Welcome to the building. This happens every year. And it's always my kitchen. So, hey, what's up?
You just say, welcome to the building and hand him a towel.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't ever say I never got you anything.
That's right. He was very nice. And I was like, I'll let you know when I hear back from the plumber. It always happens on a Sunday morning, too, which is, as we know, the least expensive time to need a plumber. There's nothing to be done. And our landlords do not give a fuck in the tradition of landlords everywhere.
As is the custom.
As is the custom. Their thing is we will call the plumber when your kitchen floods, not we will sort out the plumbing in this building. So it's Band-Aid City over here at the old Sparks condo.
Oh, jeez.
I vow that if I ever become a landlord, I will give a fuck. I will. Just because I've had so many landlords over the years who do not. But who keep cashing my checks.
I will be submitting my application to your commune.
Yes. Whatever it becomes, yes. Some kind of dirt house, I imagine.
Just a pile of dirt. Teresa's like, here it is.
It has a grass roof. That's hip now. Oh no, it's just a hole in the ground, but whatever.
I can't wait.
It's going to be amazing. If you don't like facts and you like hot takes on cold topics, welcome to It Chooses You. Please like, rate, subscribe, and download our episodes. Thank you. The Smidgen this week is me, and I, as I discussed with you, took a few days off from class and just read and stared at the wall, which was super necessary. And I reread Jane Eyre. And then I watched a couple different movie adaptations of Jane Eyre. And so I'm going to talk about Jane Eyre today.
All right.
Have you read Jane Eyre?
I was supposed to.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I probably read the whole thing, or maybe just flaked out right at the end. But I know I'm familiar with the story. Let's put it that way.
I read Jane Eyre, of course. I was an English major. It was required. It's on the 100 books you should read list. I don't know if it should be there. It's just kind of around. Jane Eyre is the story of a poor, ugly girl who educates herself and survives many hardships as a child, advertises for a position, acquires a position as a governess, and then falls in love with the master of the estate. Luckily, he also falls in love with her, so it all ends up okay, even though he's blinded in a disaster. So that's like the basic plot line.
That is my favorite summary. That should have been the Jane Eyre section of my English class. Should have been just that.
Here's what this story is about, but then here's what this story is actually about. That's every English class. Like, what's the plot? Great. Now, what does that mean? And it's why I like being an English major. It has served me in no way as an adult, except to make me very poor for a very long time, and also to look at things in a way that is not helpful for social relationships or for economic stability. Charlotte Bronte, born in 1816, and I died 39 years later. That's the language it's written in, is the language of the day. She was, I think, born and raised in North Yorkshire, and was the third of 6 children, 2 of whom died young, at a school that had an outbreak of illness. So Lowood School in Jane Eyre is actually based on her personal experiences of losing people she loved in this harsh school environment, I think. Have you seen any of the filmic adaptations?
I believe I have.
Okay. Do you remember who starred in them?
Was there one like 8 to 10 years ago?
The answer to that is always yes, by the way. There's been one about every 8 to 10 years since the book was published, I think. Even before movies, they were doing movie adaptations of Jane Eyre. I don't know the most recent one because I don't have a chronology. This is not a facts-based podcast. I can't be more clear about that. Hey, welcome everybody.
I know I've seen one or two. I don't particularly remember them.
It wouldn't matter which one you watched because, you know, they're all roughly comparable at this point. I'm waiting for the masterful adaptation of it. Has not occurred yet. Where's Emma Thompson when you need her? She's focused on the Austen. She's completely neglected the Bronte. Once Emma Thompson figured out how to adapt these novels, I feel like people could have taken just a leaf from her book and just done that. She came up with the roadmap when she adapted Sense and Sensibility. It's a great adaptation of that book. I don't know why people can't adapt Jane Eyre, but they can't because every movie version of it is a romance. And the story's a romance. But I think one of the main problems is that the defining characteristics of the two leads in the book are that they're not much to look at. That's like her whole thing is that she's really small and pretty plain. And he's short for a dude, broader chested than is fashionable, and also ugly. And so, how do you turn that into a Hollywood film when we expect symmetry above all else in our stars? So there's that. But that's also one of the reasons I love the book so much, is because the book is really about the interior life of this girl, Jane Eyre. It's written in the first person. It's an autobiography. It's about her interior life, and so we know what she thinks all the time, which is unusual. A woman is the main voice in a story. That's crazy, because even stories that were about women were often written in the third person, so there was a degree of distance. But here it's very, very personal. We know this lady.
One thing that is so wonderful about reading a book is exactly that, getting into the mind of someone else.
Yes.
Books do that like no other art form. And I think that that's really hard to translate.
Yes.
Because the screen is objective. It's outside that character. There are ways you can show her perspective. The easiest way would just be a really cheesy voiceover. But it doesn't give you the full depth of that character. When you end a book like that, you know that character better than you probably know a lot of people in your own lives. Also because the characters are, in general, in their reflection, honest about what they think about the world and who they are. Mm-hmm. You know, we are not always, but frequently honest, at least within our own minds. The other thing that I think is hard about adaptation is the timing and the rhythm, right? Because most film adaptations are going to be 2 to 3 hours. Maybe it's a miniseries, but that doesn't compare to the weight of time that you feel when you read a novel. David Copperfield is one of my favorite all-time books. One of my biggest pet peeves about David Copperfield adaptations, that time when he's an orphan in the beginning and the hardships that he endures. In a movie adaptation, that's about 15 minutes. But in the book, you have spent hours and hours living and reading and experiencing with David Copperfield this suffering. So the triumphs become so much more valuable and so much more satisfying.
Yeah.
There's just something about trying to translate a quote-unquote classic novel to the screen or any really good novel that just is inherently challenging.
For sure. And, you know, we're not screenwriters. I'm not saying I could do it. I'm just saying no one has yet. At least for this book. And what you're saying is correct, because the same thing happens in Jane Eyre. She has a very, very challenging early childhood, and she has experiences that would completely embitter lesser people. But she's so amazing that she figures out how to forgive and how to keep growing intellectually through it and how to keep an open, warm heart through those experiences. And it's reading her early life that makes you feel like she somehow earned the reward she gets at the end, right? And you don't necessarily get that in 90 minutes. When 7 minutes of it is the hardship, right? And the rest of it is the dresses she picks or whatever the fuck. You all right?
Yeah. I'm still reeling from the dregs, so.
She's got coffee dregs, y'all. She's coughing intermittently because she has... It's like Turkish coffee, but you drank the bottom of the cup.
I got a case of the dregs, y'all.
I think that's what the children at Lowood School died from in Jane Eyre. Coffee dregs. They died from coffee dregs. As I said, the first hardship to adaptation is that the main point of these two characters is that they're not attractive. That's a tough sell in Hollywood. And all of the film adaptations of Jane Eyre, of course, feature attractive people. I don't go to the movies to watch me falling in love with whoever I fall in love with. We are average-looking people. Please show me symmetry. That's why you're there.
I'm just here to watch hot people do stuff. And each other.
That's right.
Bridgerton.
It's the Bridgerton syndrome, that's right. So I get it. One of the adaptations stars William Hurt, who is attractive, and Charlotte Gainsbourg, who is beautiful. I'm like, she's not Jane Eyre. Like, Jane Eyre is weird looking and tiny, and you are absolutely gorgeous. That's a hardship. The other thing, as you said, is that we know exactly who she is because we are hearing her perspective about all of these events. And she's writing it also in the book from the distance of time. So she's not in the moment narrating what's happening to her. She's recalling the events of her past. She's able to turn it into a story because she knows how it ends and she sees the themes, which is, I think, one of the reasons I like the book so much, because as you and I have discussed, like, finding the theme in our life is really important to us and pulling them out and thinking about them. I feel a lot of kinship with Jane Eyre. She's a very intelligent woman who's not attractive. I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but it's relevant in like 15 different directions. She's an intelligent, poor woman who is not attractive, but somehow manages to find a companion of the mind. And that is why it's an amazing book, because she and Rochester feel the same way about things. They think the same way about things, and their manners make other people uncomfortable because they're both weirdos, but they are weirdos who have found each other. And that's delightful.
It's probably also satisfying to you because it's a world in which a good heart and a keen mind
matter.
Are the values on which success is determined.
Yeah, they matter. And that is, ooh boy, how inspiring. Whereas in reality, maybe not as powerful as we might wish they were. The other thing that's really important to talk about is like the creepy power dynamics in their relationship. And that's real. I'm not trying to hide that or sweep it under the rug. It's the same creepy power dynamic as in The Sound of Music, where he's essentially shagging the staff. What are you doing? This is a little creepy. And so that's there. And I don't really have anything to say about it except that it's there. In the book, it's clear that she is 100% his equal because she's as intelligent as him and as curious as he is, and they see things the same way. So she's his equal sort of personally, on the personal level of power dynamics. But structurally, she is his employee, and he has a huge amount of money, and he pays her a tiny amount of money. All of that is there. And also, the other key event in this book is the creation of the madwoman in the attic. Like, this is the first time where that trope exists. She created a trope in this book. There's a book by Sandra Gilbert and Susan Gubar from 1979. So it's old school, but it's still relevant in literary criticism and in English. It's called The Madwoman in the Attic. And it's basically like the woman writer and 19th century literary imagination. And so Charlotte Bronte created the character of Bertha Mason, who is Mr. Rochester's wife. He married her young. He was sort of quickly not trapped, but very much encouraged in the marriage by his family and her family, and then realized shortly after the marriage that she's fucking crazy. Biting him, trying to burn the house down crazy. And so he now has this wife who he just has to either kill, which frankly, if I was him, I would have definitely given more thought to that option. But he is a good person, and so he doesn't. And so he keeps her in the attic and tries to, and has a kind jailer for her, etc. There's actually a book about Bertha Mason called The Wide Sargasso Sea by the author Jean Rhys, who's a Dominican-born, Dominican-British writer. And it's a prequel to Jane Eyre. And it's all about Bertha Mason and how, is crazy crazy? And why do we call her crazy? Bertha Mason is from the West Indies, so she is a woman of color. So he's trapped, pushed into a marriage with someone he believes he loves, who is a woman of color, who then turns out to be quote unquote crazy. And then he brings her back to England, hides her in an attic for 20 years, and lives this miserable life until a teenager who he's just hired as his governess comes to work at his house and he decides he loves her. So there's a lot of problems with the novel too. And let's not ignore those. That's one of the reasons I like it so much, is because there are so many questions. As we look at it from our 2021 perspective, there's a lot to unpick there. And so I think that is also one of the reasons an adaptation is hard, because I think it's actually a much more problematic novel than anything Austen wrote in terms of its social and racial class structures and power structures. And so how do you represent that? I don't have answers for any of this, but I can love the idea that an intelligent woman with a keen mind finds her match, and he sees in her exactly who she is and loves her for it, and is willing to defy convention to marry her. Because if you're a lord who has as much money, you don't marry your governess. He's basically ostracizing himself from social society, and he doesn't care. Now, he doesn't care because he's been living in hell with a crazy wife in the attic for 20 years. But there's hope for girls like me. Let's put it that way. There are also problems and things that it's necessary to sort of unpick before you and I adapt this novel into a screenplay, Claire. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my hot take on Jane Eyre. If you have time and you're interested in this at all, if you are an intelligent woman who may not be as symmetrical as a movie star, read Jane Eyre, read Jane Eyre, read The Wide Sargasso Sea, and read The Madwoman in the Attic. And then, come and talk to us, because it's very important.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Teresa.
Thank you, Claire.
Everyone, thank you for listening. Please remember to rate, subscribe, download, and like our episodes if you enjoyed this. We will see you next time. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Testing? Great. Thank you for listening to It Chooses You. Your hosts are Teresa Sparks and Claire Patton. Our theme song is by Bobby Dart. If you'd like to get in touch with us, drop us an email at itchoosesyoupodcast@gmail.com.